Mamas, if you have ever felt like this, why do I still look pregnant? If you have ever asked yourself that question or some variation of that question and want to get to this down here and want to get to the feeling of, I can't believe how good I look, or even more important than that, I can't believe how good I feel, I want to take you down that path today. I want to outline exactly what those steps are to go from frustration and disappointment, feeling like a plateau, like a lack of progress, all the way down here to feeling like you can conquer the world and achieve those postpartum goals and those post-pregnancy goals that you have for yourself. My name is Dr. Jared Beckstrand. I am a doctor of physical therapy. I'm a postpartum specialist. I'm a personal trainer. I have helped tens of thousands of women to get from this feeling up here to this feeling down here. And again, that's exactly the path. That's exactly the journey that I want to take you on. I did cover up the steps. I did want to create a little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue. And so hopefully you stick around. Hopefully you watch this video. Most of all, I hope that you find it incredibly effective. I will mention that we are going live here on the Mommy Tummy Fix channel this week because of a relaunch event that is happening. The Mommy Tummy Fix app, it's new, it's redesigned, it's improved, and it's ready for you today. We're going to talk about that more here in just a little bit. If you're interested in learning more about it, the link is in the description to this video. Okay, so let's talk about this. How many of you have ever felt, why do I still look pregnant? How many of you have ever asked that question? Maybe it's 4, 5, 6 months later and you think to yourself, why do I still look 4, 5, 6 months pregnant? Another variation on that question is, how come none of my efforts are working? I feel like I'm eating healthy. I feel like I'm exercising. I'm doing all the core work, and yet nothing seems to be happening. Why aren't I progressing faster? How many of you have ever felt like, what is this going to take? Like, what am I missing? I'm doing those things that I did before, and they just don't seem to be working now. These are all different variations on a same or on a common similar theme. And that is frustration. And that is doubt. You know, you did this amazing thing, and you ladies are absolute superheroes and should be applauded and congratulated every step of the way. You grew a human being inside your body, and then you brought that human being into the world. An absolute miracle in every sense of the world. Absolutely pat yourself on the back. That seems like such an understatement, but pat yourselves on the back and congratulate and welcome that person into the world and just feel good about what you did. But inevitably, we also get to the point where, okay, I want to start to feel like me again. These are the types of frustrations, these are the types of feelings that a lot of ladies come into my clinic with. These are the types of feelings that ultimately, my goal is to help women through this and to get down to this point right here. So if you've ever felt that way, this is the right place. And I want to start by sharing a quick story. My wife, Camille, you've seen her here. She's all over the Mommy Tummy Fix channel. She felt this exact same way. It was after our third kid. We have 4. After our third child, she was working out. She was exercising. She had always, I don't want to say bounced back because I don't like to use that sentence, but she had always recovered pretty quickly on her own by doing things more or less her way. She's always been fit and active. That's what she's always done. After our third child, she was doing the same thing, but wasn't seeing the progress, wasn't seeing the improvement that she ultimately wanted. She did that for about 1 year. So about 1 year after our third child was born, she came to me and said, Jared, look, I think I need a little more help. I think I need some professional advice. I had husband goggles on. I thought she looked incredible, and so I didn't see any problem. But when she came to me and said, hey, I'm not seeing the progress that I want to be seeing. Can you help me out with it? That's where I took off the dad goggles and put on the physical therapist goggles and said, let's take a look at this. Let's treat this a little more clinically. Come to find out, she, like the vast majority of the women that I work with, had a condition known as diastasis recti. And so the first thing that we have to talk about is this abdominal separation. Have you ever heard of abdominal separation? Have you ever heard of diastasis recti? I'd be curious, put it in a comment down below. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like, abdominal separation. What happens is, as your pregnancy progresses, baby gets bigger. Your stomach has to stretch. Sorry, anatomy geek, it's not your stomach that stretches, your belly, your abdomen has to stretch to accommodate that growing placenta, that growing fetus. It has to make more room. Now, the way that it does that is it has basically a built-in zipper, which is a miracle of anatomy. If you've ever seen a really muscular individual, you know what six-pack abs look like. That muscle is called your rectus abdominis, and there's two halves to it that come down right here. You've got a left half and a right half. They are joined by connective tissue. As baby grows, it's that connective tissue that actually stretches. And so both halves of that rectus abdominis have to stretch in order to accommodate room, in order to make room for that growing baby. So this ab separation, this diastasis recti, is a very real thing. I couldn't remember what my next point was. I got one more point to make. It doesn't always go back after childbirth. So after the baby is gone, the stomach usually goes back to what it was before. However, not always. In fact, studies have shown, they've done research on this, in your third trimester. How many of you have carried a baby to your third trimester? This abdominal separation happens to 100% of women in their third trimester. So if you raised your hand, if you said, yes, I've carried a baby into my third trimester, congratulations, your abs have separated. You have had this diastasis recti condition. What's interesting about it is 6 weeks later, same research group looked at the same group of women and found that 60% of women still had this separation greater than 1 inch, greater than 2 fingers, basically, measured horizontally. And so what's interesting here is you go in for your 6-week visit and you look around in there at other women in the 6-week visit. 2/3 of them still have this diastasis recti separation. But then what's really interesting is researchers looked at it again 1 year later and found that 35%, about 1 in 3 women, still have this separation. But what's fascinating about this is that that number increases with subsequent pregnancies. Meaning, if you've had one pregnancy, chances are it's going to go back. But those chances decrease with pregnancy number 2, and then they decrease with pregnancy number 3. Basically, we're stretching this tissue, and then it goes back 90%. And then we're stretching it, and then it goes back 80% of that. And you get the idea, right? Subsequent pregnancies are a little bit harder for that tissue to come back together. And so usually, second, third, fourth pregnancies, you can be pretty sure that you have this diastasis recti condition, and you can be pretty sure that it's probably not going back on its own. Case in point, my wife, she had it after her third pregnancy, and that's where her frustration set in. She's like, why isn't what I'm doing working? So, have you ever had that question? That's point number 2. Why core exercises don't work? She's like, Jared, I'm doing the sit-ups, I'm doing the crunches, I'm doing the planks, I'm doing all of the work that traditionally worked in the past. Why isn't that working now? Why don't core exercises work? It's because you're doing these core exercises to an injured muscle. And so the closest analogy that I can draw, actually, you know what, let me tell you a different story instead. Once upon a time, well, it was a couple of years ago, I was working on a woman, we were rehabbing her broken hand, and we were doing some massage, we were doing some range of motion stuff, we were sitting and talking, and I was talking about this very idea. She expressed this same frustration. Why do I still look pregnant? Well, how come what I'm doing doesn't work? And I was explaining this idea, and she got it, she caught right on, and she looked at it, and she said, oh, it would be like rehabbing my broken hand on a punching bag. Doing exercises that are too aggressive, too intense, too early before that part is ready for those exercises. And I love that. I thought that that was so profound. The other analogy that I like to give is, let's say you had knee surgery. You had a surgery on your knee. 6 weeks later, your doctor says, everything looks good. Let's start physical therapy. Go in and see Jared. You come into my clinic and I say, hey, well, happy first day of physical therapy. Let's do some sprint intervals on a treadmill. like in our brains, we say, no, that's like the worst possible thing that you could do. That's going to result in injury. That's going to result in delayed healing. That's going to be a nightmare for that person. Yet we do it all the time postpartum. You have your baby, you go into your doctor, or excuse me, 6 weeks later, you go into your doctor, 6 to 8 weeks later, you go into your doctor and your doctor says, you're clear, which is, that could be a video in and of itself. It's the worst phrase ever in healthcare. You're clear to resume normal activity. And you go out of there and you say, oh good, I'm clear. Now I can go back to my sit-ups and my planks and my crunches. I can start to work on my abs. Not realizing that you just jumped on the treadmill at a very high speed after that knee injury. The metaphor is still the same. The analogy is still the same. Core exercises don't work because you're doing too much for an injured area. It actually is a good way to sustain and perpetuate the injury. It's the reverse of what you hope it would be or what you're trying to accomplish. Does that make sense? And so as we go through these steps, if you're wondering, why do I still look pregnant? We have to talk about this abdominal separation, and we have to talk about the core exercises that you're doing that are actually the wrong core exercises, that are actually you're doing the wrong thing for the outcome down here that you're trying to accomplish. Okay, I hope that you're tracking so far, which brings us to number 3. What should we do instead? So instead of these core exercises, this is where I come in, this is where I get on my soapbox, this is where we talk about core rehab. What do you think of when you think of rehab exercises? Let's go back to the knee injury analogy that I just gave you. We would start with gentle range of motion. We would start with quad and hamstring muscle activation. We would start on things, we would work on maybe walking mechanics and getting that back down. Muscle activation. We would start gently to lay a foundation. And then as you get stronger, we would progress with harder exercises. Does that make sense? And so maybe eventually after 4 to 6 weeks of physical therapy, we're starting to do some squats. And then maybe after that, 4 to 6 weeks later, we're starting to walk a little quicker. And then after that, 4 to 6 weeks later, perhaps we're jogging on the treadmill. It's a progression, right? We have to crawl before we can walk. We have to walk before we can run. We have to run before we can sprint. If you go from crawl to sprint up here, you're doomed for failure. You're doomed for frustration. You're doomed for difficulty right here. Instead, we take the steps. And that is basically what core rehab is. And so how is core rehab different? The exercises look different. Again, we're training different muscles to establish a foundation. We're training different muscles to heal that rectus abdominis, to close that gap, to increase core strength and stability, to decrease lower back pain, to decrease incontinence, all of those problems that are really common postpartum. We want to lay that foundational groundwork. So core rehab is different. We're working different muscles with different exercises. It's going to be a lot more mellow than what you're maybe used to in an effort to, again, establish that foundation. I've got a couple more questions that I'm usually asked about core rehab. Let's see, why is core rehab important? I already kind of mentioned it. Again, it's the foundation that we're laying. And a lot of the problems that moms experience postpartum can be overcome by training the right muscles the right way with the right progression. That's really important. We'll talk more about that in just a second. And then the other question that I always get asked, what if I skip core rehab? I mean, like my mind went to, in a nutshell, we don't get this, right? Well, we can eventually get to here, but the path to that progress is usually really delayed. We kind of get stuck in this cycle. Have you ever been in that cycle before where you're doing your core exercises and you feel like you're exercising and you feel like you're doing things right and it's just not working? And so maybe you up the intensity. You say, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe you increase the intensity and it's still not working. And then you get frustrated and say, God, this must not be working for me. And then you give up. And then a month maybe goes by and you start to look at yourself in the mirror, you start to assess how you feel. It's like, I really got to do something here. And you start the cycle again. I jump into exercises. Exercises aren't working, so I'm not doing enough, so I'll do more. Once I do more, this is really hard. This is frustrating. I'm not seeing progress. I'm going to give up. And then the cycle starts again. This is, again, the conversation that I have with moms all day, every day, is how can we break out of this cycle? And the answer is, we need to start to do some core rehab exercises. We need to take a step away from I said push-ups, which is also a bad thing. Anyway, we won't go there. Sit-ups, crunches, planks, basically aggressive activation of that rectus abdominis muscle. Anything where I'm bringing my chest closer to my pelvis, or bringing my chest closer to my pelvis or resisting that motion, i.e. a plank, is going to activate that rectus abdominis, is going to be rehabbing your hand on a punching bag, is going to be too aggressive for that at this time. That's why core rehab is important, and that's what happens if you skip it. If you skip that core rehab process, oftentimes, in a nutshell, you're not going to see the progress that you want to see, and it's going to result in this cycle of frustration and exercise and frustration and exercise. Does that make sense? I hope that you're understanding this. I hope that you're getting this. Okay, and so that being said, we've answered the question, why do I still look pregnant? It's because of the diastasis recti ab separation that many moms experience. We've established that core exercises don't work because it's aggressively working out an injured area. We've established the importance of core rehab instead. So hopefully you're tracking with this, and hopefully in your head you're saying, yeah, I need core rehab exercises. Let me answer one more question that I'm sure that someone out there is asking, because this is the point where I always get this question. I should have written it on the board. Am I too old? Jared, I had a baby a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I've had just about every timeline, right? Jared, I had a baby 10 years ago. Are core rehab exercises still good for me? To which I have to answer, can you still activate that same muscle? Can you follow simple instructions? Can you do what I ask you to do? Can you do these exercises and avoid these exercises? The answer is usually yes, I can do that. Then my answer is yes, you're still going to see some benefit from core rehab exercises. So keep that in mind, no matter how long it's been. Oftentimes we think of this postpartum period as 6 weeks to 1 year after having a baby. Once you've had a baby, you're always postpartum. If it's been 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you're still postpartum, meaning I have had a baby in the past, you're still going to benefit from core rehab exercises. Okay, so now that I've got your buy-in, now that you say, oh wow, I should really look into this core rehab thing, where can I find a core rehab program? If you think to yourself, wow, Jared, this all sounds great, what do these core exercises look like, and how should I do them, and how should I follow along, and all of that? Well, ladies, that's where we have to talk about the Mommy Tummy Fix. As a postpartum physical therapist, this is the system that I developed. Basically, I call it Physical Therapist in Your Pocket. We used to sell this as a bundle of PDFs, but now we are exclusively app-based. And so you can actually get our Mommy Tummy Fix app, which has an entire 12-phase core rehab program built into it. Among some other things, we also have some cardio workouts and some strength workouts and some nutrition advice. We're going to be talking about those in live videos later this week. So if you're watching this on a replay, make sure you come back and see if we published those yet as well. It's a complete system to help moms with the two biggest questions that I treat. Jared, why do I still look pregnant? That helps moms with their two main goals that they come in to see me with. And those two main goals are, Jared, I want a flatter stomach, and Jared, I want to lose weight. And so we built the entire app around answering those two questions. But in the program, I mentioned it's a 12-phase rehab program. Basically, the way that I designed it is I wanted to treat you personally. I treated it as if you came in to see me as a physical therapist on day one, I would start you with certain exercises to just activate that deep core, to get used to activating your diaphragm and to reconnect with your pelvic floor and to activate the muscle that we're primarily concerned about is your transverse abdominis muscle that wraps around your stomach like a corset. When we tighten that muscle, it's like tightening a corset, i.e. we shrink our waistline and also improve core stability. That's the whole goal of all of this. If you came in to see me on day one, we would do some exercises, and then eventually I would progress you to phase 2 exercises. And then when you get strong enough for those, I would progress you to phase 3, and so on and so forth. If you're going to a physical therapist, if you've been going to physical therapy for 4 or 5 weeks, and that physical therapist has not progressed your exercises, I would encourage you to find a different physical therapist immediately. You should be stronger. You should be more healed. You should be more capable on week 4 than you were on week 1. And that's what I built into the Mommy Tummy Fix Core Rehab program. You're going to start with phase 1. It might take you 1 day to do that. You might be strong enough already. It might take you a week to do that. But when you feel strong enough and when you feel ready, you hit a button in the app that says, I'm ready to move to the next phase. That's like you coming in to see me on visit 2 and me saying, wow, these exercises look great. Let's go to the next level. It's this idea of progressive core rehab that's ultimately going to help you to heal that diastasis recti and achieve these goals that you're ultimately after. We've helped thousands of ladies do it. It's so rewarding. It's one of my favorite things that we do. We just relaunched our app. We rebranded it. We made it user-friendly. We've done some improvements. We've done some upgrades with it. It's just a much better experience for you as a user. It's much simpler to follow. And basically, we wanted to trim a lot of the fluff. We wanted to trim a lot of the distraction away from it so that you knew exactly what to do every single day to ultimately get to, again, the outcomes that you're after. And so if you're interested in checking that out, you can head over to mommytummyfix.com. There are a couple of different options available. We have a monthly option that you can pay for the app monthly to use it that way, but we also have a lifetime option. Let me tell you about the lifetime option really quick. The lifetime option we are going to sell for $149. That is, again, lifetime access. That's a one-time payment. It's yours to use for the rest of forever. That's actually cheaper. That's about half of what I charge for one visit as a physical therapist. And so with the app, you get 12 weeks, well, I say weeks, 12 phases of core rehab, depending on how long it takes you to get through those phases. You get 12 phases of core rehab, you get strength training, you get home cardio, you get nutrition, you get a healthy habits checklist. The app is just jam-packed, it's loaded. $149 is a steal. But Camille, bless her heart, she's like, look, we've got to get this into as many hands of as many women as possible because of this. We have to help women to get to here. And so she's like, what if we introduced it for a lower price? And I was like, okay, like $139, $129? She's like, no, what if we went down to $97? And so we debated, we deliberated back and forth, and ultimately, of course, I'm going to agree with Camille. That's actually the introductory price that we introduced the Mommy Tummy Fix at 4 years ago. We've been doing this for 4 years now. It's been an incredible journey. And so if you go there right now, if you go to mommytummyfix.com, you can actually get lifetime access to the app for only $97. This is a deal that is going to go away in about a week. And this is a deal that you will never see again. We talked about it as a team. This is a special reintroductory rate to celebrate our relaunch, to hook you mamas up. And so it's never going to go this low again. And so I guarantee you that. Again, if you're interested in learning more about it, head over to mommytummyfix.com. I've also got a link in the description down below. Ultimately, this is the most rewarding part that I experience as a postpartum physical therapist. Women come in with this question: why do I still look pregnant? How come nothing I'm doing is working? Is this just who I'm destined to be? Like, is this just who I am now? And what's fascinating is that if we go through these steps, and if you realize diastasis recti and why exercises don't work and the importance of core rehab, and if you follow along with that program, ultimately we get down here. And What's really fascinating is that I wrote in 2 sentences down here. The first one says, I can't believe how good I look, which is what most women think they want. Most women come in and say, I don't want to look pregnant anymore. I want to look better. I want to look in the mirror and like what I see. It always starts, the catalyst, kind of the tipping point, the pushing point, is always this idea of I want to look better. But what is so fascinating and what I love the most is after we've gone through this and after you help a woman to heal that separation and they've gone through the core exercises and they followed the workout plan and the nutrition plan and they've lost weight and they've healed their stomach. Yeah, number one is awesome, but what is so much more special, what is so much just more rewarding for you ladies is when they come in and when women say, I can't believe how good I feel. My back doesn't hurt anymore. I'm not incontinent anymore. I like what I see when I look in the mirror. I have confidence and I've restored my body positivity. I feel like I'm making progress. I feel stronger. I'm more functional as a mom. I can play with my kids. I can run and I can go to the beach. I can go to the pool and I don't hate how I look in a swimsuit. I can't believe the improvement that this has made, not only physically, which is a strong component of health, but also mentally and socially and emotionally. And you just show up better in all of those different areas as a wife, as a mother, as a member of society. You just show up different when you feel good and when you feel different. So ladies, there it is. That's the path from frustration to conquer to success. This is what we have to talk about if you're interested in the program. Once again, mommytummyfix.com. We've got it linked in the description down below. I hope this was helpful. Leave me some comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your feelings. Let me know what you think about this. If there's anything that we can help you out with, let us know. We are here for you. I'm going to check chat real quick. Chat doesn't look like it always makes me nervous, like when the chat there's nothing going on in the chat. Like, is this working? I hope that it is. Anyways, ladies, we're your biggest cheerleaders. We would love to work with you. We would love to try to help you out. Let us know how we can help, and thank you so much for joining us. Okay, bye.